This is Listen After Watching,
a podcast where we recap and discuss the most mind-bending, twisty, and thought-provoking TV shows and movies out there. I'm Adrian.
and I'm Alicia. Let's dive in.
Hello. Welcome to Listen After Watching, your favorite sibling podcast. This week we are talking about Severance, Season 2, Episode 8, Sweet Vitriol. And wow, this one came out of left field.
This is decidedly not a fan favorite episode, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
Yeah, you will hear all of our feelings, and it'll be good. Leash, how you been doing this week?
I've been pretty good. It's getting nicer out. I went to the farmer's market yesterday. That was really nice. I've been missing that. They do it year round, but like, who wants to go in the dead of winter? And it was poppin'.
Oh, I bet it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling good yesterday, so I didn't even get to go outside, but it looks like it's been a very nice weekend.
Yeah, hopefully you can get out today. Also, really good TV this past week.
Oh, yeah, lots of finales.
Lots of finales. We got Love is Blind finales over this weekend. And then earlier in the week, we got the Traitors finale, which was super exciting. I don't know how much overlap there is here, but Traitors is a great show. Highly recommend.
I think we just have a lot of TV lovers here. I think a lot of people are probably watching Traitors and Love is Blind. Traitors was fun. Love is Blind this season was horrible, I thought. So boring.
Snooze fest. It keeps getting more and more boring.
Yeah, before this episode, Alicia and I were talking about how they need to do a queer Love is Blind and how it would work.
Yeah, right. I feel like it'd be a little more difficult to pull off, and you don't want Nick and Vanessa Lachey as your hosts for that. That's for damn sure.
No, there are no less queer people than them. I don't even know if that made sense.
No, I'm with you. But yeah, I want to talk about Traitors really quick because it was just so good. So if you haven't watched the finale, spoiler for Traitors, skip
fast forward.
I don't know, a minute ahead. But this was like the best possible outcome for Traitors, in my opinion, based on like where we had left off from the week before's episode. Yes. I mean, it was just perfect.
I think we were all rooting for Danielle to go down. She was getting so annoying to me. And I can't believe she made it that far.
I know.
But yeah, I loved that. I think everyone was upset that they drew out the reveal of who Brittany voted for to this last episode. But it was so great.
It was worth it.
And then the Faithfuls pulling it off in the end. I mean,
they really kept us on our toes with Dolores. I thought Dolores was going to fuck everything up for everyone.
Dolores never voted in a way that made any sense whatsoever. So I was really, and the faces she was pulling at the end of the fire scene, I was like, this girl about to fuck it all up.
I know. They must have like had a conversation with each other before that they didn't let us in on, because it seemed like they all kind of knew.
Maybe.
I don't know. But yeah, I saw a lot of people online being like, this is the first time I have rooted for Dolores's vote, like been happy with what she did. Thank goodness.
Yeah. The reunion show for this season was actually pretty good too. I don't know if you watched it.
I only watched part of it. I think I fell asleep or went to bed or something in the middle of it, but I need to finish it. I know that, Bob the Drag Queen, like one of my favorite entertainers and online personalities now, I heard that he got a lot of great moments in the reunion.
Yeah, it was fun to have him back. Just a huge personality. Yeah, I think it's nice to see that they're all, some of them are like kind of friends and have become really good friends. Mm-hmm. True. But there were some good moments that they brought back, like Tom singing and...
Oh, I missed that.
We probably shouldn't be talking about Traitors for 10 minutes on our podcast, but about Severance.
You know, it's what's going on in our lives is
current
other
events.
TV. It's pop culture. You know, we're keeping you plugged in, okay?
This was our week.
We can jump into the main event.
Let's get
Shall
do
we?
it.
Let's go do
Yeah.
it.
Let's
Okay.
get do it.
So, before we get started, this is your perpetual spoiler alert if you haven't watched Severance Season 2, Episode 8, called Sweet Vitriol yet, then go watch it. What the hell are you doing here? And then come back and listen to what we have to say, which is hopefully something interesting.
So insightful and something you've never thought of. We actually are going to do things a little differently this episode. We're not going to go beat by beat. We're going to kind of give a quick recap of the episode, but then we're just going to dive into what we thought and what we learned this episode and try that out, because this was just a very different type of episode, as we'll get into. But let's really quick do a recap here. So the entirety of this episode takes place in Salt's Neck, which we find out is Cobel's hometown. So she goes back and meets up with an old friend who brings her to her Aunt Sissy's house, which we find out is where she grew up and also where her mom died. In this episode, we also find out that Cobel was the original inventor of the severance procedure.
Wow.
So, whoa, what the?
Major reveal.
So, we learned that she went back to find her old notebook containing all her notes on severance. And the episode ends with Cobel finally answering Devon's phone call, which she's been getting blown up by Devon, where she's driving off into the sunset, essentially, and she says, "Tell me everything."
Mark. I love the way she says Mark.
Her accent, I don't know where it's from, but it's from it's a Salt's Neck accent.
Salt's Neck. Yeah. We know.
But what were your initial thoughts on this episode, Leash?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like we've been jerked around all over the place this season. Like, we'll have an episode where so many things happen with so many characters that it's like hard for us to even recap succinctly like all of the things that happened and what we thought about them. And this one, well, first I have to say, this episode has the worst IMDb rating out of all the episodes this season so far. Last episode, we were at a peak for the season. It was 9.4 out of 10. And this episode, 6.7 out of 10, which basically means like people kind of hated it. And I think is very controversial in online. If you're looking at conversations that are happening, there are two camps: people who are like, "You just didn't get it, and it was really good," and people who are like, "That was so boring, and I hated it." So,
What camp
I don't
were
know.
you?
I think I'm more like kind of in the middle about this episode. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. But I'm definitely skewing more towards, like, not my favorite.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm in team. I was pretty bored, but I understand what they were doing. This is what they call a bottle episode. So it takes place basically in one set, one area, which in this case is Salt's Neck, with a very limited cast, and they dive deep into a storyline, which I think we really needed this for Cobel, because she's been acting like a crazy lady, and we just needed to understand why and where she's coming from. And obviously she's about to become even a bigger character than she has been now that we know that she invented Severance, which is wild. But yeah, I just found myself in parts of the show for the first time this season being a little bored. And I think it had to do with the conversations between her and Hampton, which is her little old boy toy from the ether factory. I found them just kind of boring to get. I don't know. I think just the way that they speak also, and like the halted like da 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 da, like tone of it was just a little bit like get to the point for me. And we didn't even learn that much about her and Hampton's relationship, which I think would have given a little more intrigue.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. This was a tough one, but I feel bad for Patricia Arquette because this is like her episode and everybody's hating it. I love her.
I mean, a lot of people love it, though. A lot of people really
Yes.
loved this episode and appreciated the storytelling. I thought the storytelling was good for the most part. I thought it was an interesting set. It was a beautiful like place to film. I think they filmed up in Newfoundland. It was really pretty. Also, it was just a dilapidated town. I don't know if that's pretty,
Yeah.
but like the landscape of it all was actually really pretty.
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of people really liked this episode. And of course, we're always going to be torn in two ways. I thought Patricia Arquette did a great job of it. I just think, I don't know. I think the story could have been told in a little bit of a more interesting way.
Probably. People were
I don't
saying
know.
like, why couldn't they have like inserted her storyline into other episodes like while we were seeing other things happen with the rest of the characters, which I can kind of agree with, but I don't know. I feel like its own episode to itself feels maybe like the drama of what we learn is better delivered that way.
Yeah. They're really liking these capsule episodes this season where it's, the first episode was all in, and then we were all out, and then we were all about Gemma, and now we're all about Cobel. I think we're going to get back to
Yeah.
the other style in these last two episodes, probably.
Only two
I mean, I
left.
appreciate it. This is, of all the shows that I watch, this is probably the most that it's like a work of art. And I said that about the last episode, but I think we just have to take it in and appreciate it for what it is. Not every little scene or episode is going to be, a masterpiece, but in whole, I think this show is going to be incredible. So,
Yeah, haters.
yeah, fool.
Yeah, haters. Well, let's talk about some of the things that we learn in this episode or some of our thoughts on it. First, I think we learn a lot about Cobel, obviously, in this episode. So she arrives, she meets up with Hampton, who is her old friend. I couldn't suss out who he was at first. I thought maybe he was her brother.
Yeah.
But then it was like, oh, okay, no. And especially when they kissed, you realize that's not the case. But they worked together as children in the ether mill. And so we learned that Cobel was a part of this fellowship called Wintertide, which we know that Miss Huang is also in now. So child labor, lumen love.
Yeah, a deep history of child labor. And also just something we see right off the bat about this town is it's kind of been wrecked by Lumen, who came in and created this industry around ether and then kind of left, and it's now in shambles and a lot of ether addiction happening here. Which was so interesting because the only time I've ever heard of ether is in this show, and they've talked about it maybe like once or twice in passing.
Yeah.
But apparently it's a real thing.
Yeah.
From the olden days.
From the olden days, like used as a general anesthetic back in the day. Can't imagine. Sounds awful.
And then used recreationally, as we see in this episode.
Yep. Yeah, we learn, so we meet Sissy, who is Harmony's aunt and lives at the house that Harmony grew up in and her mom lived in. And we learn that Sissy may or may not be responsible for Harmony's mom, Charlotte, her death. She was on some breathing tube ventilator, possibly, or maybe ether delivery system, people are thinking. And so, yeah, we kind of closed the loop on that. Who is Charlotte and why was Harmony carrying around this breathing tube?
Yeah, and we also learned that Charlotte and Sissy, these two sisters, were very different. So Sissy, we learn, is very devoutly into Kier and his teachings. Her room is like covered in stuff about the Tempers and the Nine Principles.
Right.
And She's very, very deep into this, we can tell. And we also learned from Hampton that Charlotte, Cobel's mother, hated Lumen, which I thought was a really interesting discovery.
Me too. I know. I feel like, so we kind of see Harmony take a little bit of a turn here from what we had known about her loyalties to Lumen. And she says to Sissy at one point, Lumen destroyed this town. So she recognizes that Lumen has done really bad things to the town she grew up in and to her personally. And I think maybe, I feel like her love of her mom and the fact that her mom hated Lumen maybe gives her even more, I don't know, drive to kind of see whatever her mission is through to the end, if it's taking down Lumen or getting some type of recognition for what she did or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about this, that Cobel's why has been very clear, that it's this loved one. Now we know it's definitely her mother that she lost. And I think this is the first time where we know for sure that her love for her mother and what she's feeling and the loss of her mother is greater than her love for Lumen. And yeah, like you said, now that we know her mom hated Lumen, that's even more fuel now that she's like connecting more with her mother and this thing that she lost, this relationship, versus how Lumen's treated her and what they've done. And she also says, I think Sissy says, go back and like ask for forgiveness and, plead for forgiveness. And Cobel says, what, so they can show me mercy like you showed mother? Basically, like, if I go back, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
So she, I think, is fully off Lumen at this point.
I think so. And then the call at the end, like with Mark and Devin, I think just kind of seals it for me. There are a lot of people I saw on the Reddit who like don't believe that Cobel is totally turned against Lumen at this point. So I don't know. I don't think I believe that. I choose to believe that what we're seeing is the truth.
Yeah, I think they took this whole episode to show us why. So I think we've got to take that at face value. And I think she is now going to probably help Mark and Devin. Also, just the music that she drives off to at the very end of the episode is very much like, I'm going to give you hell.
Yeah.
Like ready to get revenge, kind of. So
yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think they were pretty clear in where they're pointing her for these last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk about Devin a little bit, though, because last episode people were feeling a little sus about Devin, that she wanted to call Cobel immediately. I think people are still kind of having those feelings. Like, why is she trying so hard to reach Cobel when historically she's been not great to them? I personally don't think Devin has anything to do with Lumen. I think she's just trying to help her brother in any way she can. And she and Mark know that Cobel was fired from Lumen. So I think she's just pulling out all the stops and trying anything she can.
I totally agree. It would be so weird for Devin to be revealed as some like Lumen plant or informant or something. Like, I just don't see that happening. Rickon, I could see for sure something there.
Yeah, Rickon, they've given us some hints, but Devin has been ride or die for Mark this whole time.
Yeah. People are crazy. They're just reading into stuff a little too much. They need to chill out.
Chill out, everyone. Devin does say something at the end in the call. She says, we have an idea we want to try. Or I have an idea we want to try. I think that's probably still about the birthing retreat thing, which she kind of talks to Ragabi about last episode. So Devon's idea is somehow at the birthing retreat, they can switch Mark from his outie to his innie so that they can talk to his innie to get more information or try to get into Lumen with the goal of finding Gemma.
Yeah. I don't know we don't know how the birthing retreat works. Like, we don't know if there is a doorway or something where they're switched. And also with, like, Mark's dang flooded chip, is it even going to work, the way that they want it to?
Oh, I forgot about his flooded chip. I know, he's reintegrated. I don't know. The one thing people have pointed out is Cobel is one of the only people at Lumen, and now we know why, who understood that reintegration was possible. So with Ragabi potentially gone, I'm hoping Cobel can help Mark through this reintegration process.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of reintegration, so like we've seen Cobel try and like reason with the board before to say like, I think she was talking about PD, like suspecting that he was reintegrating or had reintegrated, and they were really resistant to hearing anything from her. And it makes sense now because, like, if she's the inventor and she is, thinking like a scientist and able to see these things as faulty and not foolproof, but James Egan took credit for creating it, they're not going to discredit James' work, allegedly, by saying that, like, it's faulty or there is some procedure to bypass it. Like, it would make him look bad. So they kind of like screwed themselves over there. They're having to do a bunch of damage control to save James, what's the word I'm looking for?
Credibility.
Yeah.
Face.
Yeah, I guess.
That brings up another point, though. A lot of people are commenting that it doesn't seem believable that Cobel just invented this, like, hugely complex thing on her own as, like, a young person. I kind of agree with that a little bit. I just don't think they've given us many hints that Cobel has the mind of this, like, crazy scientist that could come up with such a complex thing.
Yeah.
They really, what hints have they given us? I guess that she knew about reintegration and she knew how to get PD's chip out, but she seems way more focused on, like, interpersonal stuff in what we've seen of her than, like, the science of it all,
Yeah, they haven't. Like, I would not have thought that she was a scientist or anything like that. And, like, how would she have come up with this stuff? But I don't know. I think they tried to tell us when she was, like, riffling through her stuff, trying to find her notebook. I think they tried to tell us that she was, like, hey, she was, like, really smart. She was valedictorian, I think, and when she's looking through her yearbook. And she got an award for the Wintertide Fellowship that she was a part of. And, like, I don't know. I think they're trying to show us how gifted she was, but we haven't seen that anywhere else, really.
That was my problem, is they kind of gave all the evidence all at once, where we really needed kind of like a breadcrumb trail throughout, which I don't feel like they really gave us. And we've talked about this through the whole podcast. Like, shows have to show you and lead you to the story. And I feel like with this story point, they really haven't. So I understand people's frustration and, like, this is not believable and kind of out of the blue. But I'm not mad at it. I'm gonna take that new information and go with it. But I do agree that this one really came out of left field.
Yeah, it was. But hey, I like it. Good on Cobel. I like that.
I like it. She pulled her notebook right out of James' head. Symbolic.
Ooh, that is very symbolic. True.
Another thing people are talking about is, I think while she's rifling through all that stuff, there was something about her working with goats. And I guess Lumen has had, like, a goat husbandry program or something. So apparently Cobel has like worked with goats before, and through this whole show, one big question has been, what do goats have to do with anything here? I think it's probably just that they use goats to test things on.
I mean, that seems like the most reasonable answer,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, people are really eager to see more of the goats, and we really haven't seen anything else. Like, we just have more questions about what's going on with them.
I
So,
know. That makes me think that the goats are not like this key part of
right,
like Cold Harbor or something. Like Cold Harbor's going to be Gemma and a goat or something, like
right. Yeah. By the way, did you notice in the last episode, in Gemma's episode, there's that like that vision chart on the wall, and one of them just has a bunch of goats on it. Like, the thing that's like the letters get smaller as you get down to the bottom.
Oh, no, I didn't.
There's one regular one with letters, and then there's one that's just like goats.
I just think goats are probably they've been a part of Lumen and like testing and like the stuff that they're doing, and it's just become like this theme and this thing that's
Their
present.
mascot.
Yeah, kind of. I think the mascot for Cobel's school was like the flying kids or something, like baby
Oh,
goats,
yeah.
kids.
Yeah, you're right.
So they just love goats. Yeah, they're connected to goats, but I don't think that they're taking like a goat brain and putting it in Gemma or something like that. I don't think it's
Probably
that
not.
connected.
Watch that happen next episode.
Well, was there anything else from this episode that you think we need to tease out here?
I guess the only thing noteworthy is like they meaning Lumen are closely watching, looking for Cobel, because they show up, like she has to escape basically. So they're right on her trail. I don't know exactly what, if they're like out to get her, like a hitman situation.
Right. They send
Or if-
Drummond.
Right. I know. We don't know exactly who is coming down the road, but yeah, everyone has like someone on their heels ready to get them.
And it makes me think back to the episode where she's in the parking lot talking with Helena and she gets spooked and runs away. I'm like, she was really right to do that because they were about to
God,
take
I
her
know.
and not let her go.
No. Ooh, freaky.
Yeah, she's become a major threat to them. Well, before we start talking Cold Harbor, which I think is, we're headed there this season. It's all about that. We had a couple Reddit notes. Alicia, you had something about ether factories. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I saw a really interesting Reddit post. Let me open it up. It was from Oodport, and
Of course.
they posted about what they think the ether mills were, because I think people just assume maybe ether mill means you're making ether. But I liked their theory that the ether mills weren't made to produce ether, but they were a primitive form of severance. So we talked about how ether was used as like a general anesthetic, and it would make sense that before they had the chip, before it was invented, that maybe they would kind of put these children or whoever was working at the ether mill in a trance of sorts, like have a big vat of ether kind of wafting around the entire building, and everyone's just doing their work, but they don't maybe remember, or maybe they're being, I don't know, kind of like tested upon somewhat, kind of like our Severance employees are now, or used for some other bad purpose.
Interesting. Yeah, that could totally be. We know Severance loves to take advantage of people and test on them.
Mm-hmm.
Cobel also in this episode, her boy toy offers her some ether and says, "Want to get high?" And she does it and she says, "I haven't done that since I was 8 years old."
Oh my God, that was so sad to hear.
I
8?
know.
I thought maybe she was like a teenager or something, like Miss Huang's age or something.
Right.
But
Well,
that
the
is
ether
dark.
helped her. It made her a fucking genius. So maybe I need some of this.
I know when you were talking about her not being like maybe we don't know that she has like this science background or whatever to create it. I was thinking like maybe she was just super high and she's like sketching out a bunch of stuff. I also thought it was so funny that Sissy looked through the notebook and she was like extraordinary, as if she also has some idea that these scribbles like mean something to her. I don't know. It
Right.
was funny.
This ether makes you a fucking genius. But
But
we didn't talk about Sissy tries to throw the notebook in the fire also.
yeah. Yeah,
She's
she's
so
downright
devoted
evil.
to Kier and the Egans and dumb.
Yeah. Another reason why I think it makes sense that the ether mill was maybe, or the ether was used as a primitive form of severance is because now we know that they're no longer used. Like they have been abandoned and left these towns like with major unemployment, presumably, and everyone's down on their luck. And it makes sense if they created the chip, they don't need to be using ether anymore. They don't need these mills. And it
True.
also less about, I think, well, I guess it is tied to this too. It makes sense why Sissy seems to be kind of like a town pariah. Like people don't go visit her. She doesn't go into town. And people probably blame the Cobels, maybe if they know about it. It seems like they might not, but if they do, it would make sense that they would blame them for the downfall of their town because, you know, we don't need these ether mills anymore because you and your family created the severance procedure idea, whatever.
Yeah. Well, we know that Hampton hates Lumen. So it makes sense that the whole town would probably hate this entity that kind of ruined everything and left it in, pieces.
Right.
And Sissy is like one of the holdouts, it
Devout.
seems.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it makes sense that she's a pariah.
Yeah. Either way, I think it makes sense.
Another thing, someone screenshotted a mural or like an ad that was on the side of one of the buildings that was like painted on, but it was like really stripped away. You could barely see it. But it was like something like lumen, ether, a cure for all mankind. It looked like it maybe said, which is really seeming to be similar to what they're trying to do with Severance, we think, which is to take away all of the pain and bad feelings of life.
Wow.
So I think that kind of does make sense, that theory.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Whoever took that frame.
I think that was on TikTok. So sorry, I don't remember who clipped that, but you get all the credit. I do have one quick little thing from Andy Meek on Threads. They say maybe Dieter Egan is just Kier after having inhaled ether. Sweet vitriol is what people used to call diethyl ether, 2 words you can smush together to make Dieter. So,
oh my God.
Honestly, if we're thinking about ether as severance, he really would think of that as like another being, like another version of himself.
That makes so much sense. You like get high and you're like horny as hell in the woods, run away and like jerk off.
And then you turn into the woods.
But can you imagine like you're him, you're on ether, you realize like your pants down and your dick in your hand, and you come to and you're like, what the hell was I doing? Like
old Dieter's at it again.
Old Dieter.
Old Dieter's touching my Peter.
That makes so much sense. If they didn't do that on purpose, then it was just the most happy accident. Had to be on purpose.
honestly, I didn't even tie those two things together until I just said it after what you said, but that makes so much sense.
Also,
Crazy.
what a kind of a name is Dieter?
What a kind of a name, honestly. I'm named after diethyl ether.
Oh God.
I'm probably not even saying that right.
Yeah. Close enough.
Anyway, I really want to talk about Cold Harbor and what it means in light of what we learned this episode.
I'm just
So,
gonna react to what you share because I've seen people talking about it, but I've not truly had the patience to read through people's really long explanations on Cold Harbor.
yeah.
So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about a couple theories people have, but then I want to talk about my own theory,
Ooh.
which I think is correct. It's the same theory as I have, but we'll explain it a little more. Anyway, here's a crazy one that I wanted to share, a Cold Harbor theory from Vague Penguin on Reddit. They say, Cold Harbor isn't about Gemma and her accident. It has to do with that place, meaning Cold Harbor, meaning Salt's Neck. Sissy changes her stories about Harmony's mother, so I think it has to do with Harmony's mother, or once the file is completed, the whole town is probably severed, and they're going to flip a switch on that town. I think each town listed in the files, once completed, flips a switch for everyone. At one point, I think Lumen had control of each of these towns and had the whole town get the chip. So when Mark and his team completed the first file, it was huge because it's the first mass severed switch.
Oh, interesting.
So I think this is a very interesting theory. I don't think it's right, but I think it's interesting to think about. That would mean that many cities have already been switched,
Right.
and that people have been chipped and severed and don't know it.
Right.
I think that's
Unlikely.
a little bit of a stretch. I also am wondering what Lumen would gain from severing and flipping the switch of this dilapidated town with like 25 people who are over the age of 80. Like, what are they getting out of that?
They're all high.
Like, our master plan.
Well, I also don't think that that is likely at all, but I think that probably the file names could very well be places where ether mills were, like that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe that makes sense. I also think that it's possible that people have gotten the chip that don't realize it. We know how implanted Lumen is in the medical community in these towns that they're in. We saw that in the Gemma episode with like the fertility clinic, everything. The blood draw was all Lumen. So I think it's possible that people could have the chip and not know it. But I don't know about these whole town things. Like all of Allentown is just chipped and ready to be switched over. And if this were true, if this theory were true, then those towns would already have flipped. I just don't see that. I just don't see that as being a thing.
Yeah, no, but
But fun to think about.
Try.
Everyone is also saying that Cold Harbor, when we opened on the episode, that sure looks like a Cold Harbor. So a lot of people are tying Cold Harbor to this new place we know about, which is Salt's Neck, and theories around that. Again, I think it's a dilapidated old town. I think maybe what happened to Cobel in this town is very closely tied to what Cold Harbor is. And let's talk about that. So I previously thought Cobel's interest in Severance was somehow to bring back her mom. I think a lot of us thought this. We had theories of, oh, you can live forever with this chip. You can just scoot over and be someone else when you revolve, quote unquote. I think now with this episode, and you can let me know what you think, I think with this episode, we see that that's not what this is. And with the Gemma episode also. So the next thought I had is, of course, from Gemma's episode, we think they're trying to ease human suffering. And this would make sense for Cobel to want this because she saw her mom suffer, right? So how could she make life easier for people like her mom so they didn't have to suffer and go through all of this? Now I'm thinking this whole severance procedure, and particularly Cold Harbor, is about easing Cobel's own suffering. So we've seen the immense pain that she's been in over losing her mom, and that they did leave breadcrumbs for. We've seen that through season 1, through this episode.
Yeah.
She's still in so much pain over the loss of her mom, and now we know that she didn't get to say goodbye to her mom, which is obviously a huge thing that is hanging over her. So, with all of this evidence, I stand by my prediction from last week that Cold Harbor will ultimately be about loss and grief and being able to basically do away with those feelings. And if you think about it, the grief and the loss of losing someone that you love is in so many ways worse than dying.
Oh, yeah. Totally. I think about the
Which-
worst thing that could happen in my life, and God forbid it would be if you died.
Yeah. It's hard to even think about.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are saying that Cold Harbor is going to be Gemma being drowned or experiencing death. I think that's not even as bad as this grief that Cobel has felt, the grief that Mark has felt, the grief that Gemma felt in her miscarriage. And I think this is what's going to happen in Cold Harbor and what they're ultimately trying to eliminate and find peace in.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy because, like, what is it, a cure for all mankind?
I think.
It's like the most human, the most human thing that happens is that we live and we die. And, like, you can't cure us dying, but you could cure the grief of experiencing, like, others around you dying. And yeah, I feel like, we definitely see Cobel's grief on display in this episode majorly. Like, she goes, and this is another reason why I think people have a clue as to Cobel's mom possibly just, like, huffing ether. Maybe she was really sick and she was in a lot of pain, and so she was just constantly breathing in ether. But it makes sense that Cobel would then, like, plug in the breathing tube and start breathing through it and, like, crying because she's trying to get some relief, even though she knows that, like, there's nothing in there. And so when Hampton shows up and he's like, want to get high, she's like, yeah, because that's why I came here and I was breathing out of this thing and I'm, like, trying to get some relief for my grief.
Yeah. Yeah, Cobel's story is one of grief. That's like the whole thing driving her. So I think it makes sense, especially now that we know she's the inventor of Severance and probably of this Cold Harbor plan.
Yeah.
It makes sense that that's the ultimate goal, is just like relief from this.
Yeah. I love it. I think you should put it on Reddit. Watch it rack up some likes, some upvotes.
I won't. No, they got to listen to the podcast.
Oh my God, fine. Okay. Yeah, no, I think this makes a ton of sense. It makes more sense that, yeah, you would be, like, the final thing that Gemma will experience will be the grief of someone else dying rather than herself.
Yeah, because we talked about this last episode. I don't know how you would sever yourself from dying. You know?
Yeah. Right.
You wouldn't have an experience after it, so you wouldn't even have known that you experienced it. I just don't see how that's a good use case for this.
Right.
But I think, yeah, the love between Mark and Gemma experiencing that loss, I think that's why they're the perfect combination for this.
Wow.
Woo, baby.
Baby, baby, baby. Well, I feel like there's no more to say. What do we even have to say after that?
We already solved it. No need to watch anymore.
Oh man, we only have 2 episodes left. I am shook. And the next episode, so I wanted to tease this and maybe see if we have any thoughts. The next episode is called The After Hours, and the little log line for it is Mark and Devin team with an ally. I wonder who. Helly investigates further. So we're going to see Helly's plot line move forward, and we're probably going to see Mark and Devin and Cobel team up. And then the last episode is called Cold Harbor. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I have chills just thinking about it.
I do too. Oh my God. Okay, so the After Hours, it sounds like Mark, Devin, and Cobel are breaking in to the severed floor. Right?
Yeah, it feels like that.
I
hope so.
Like that. And especially, it feels like that. Especially if Mark is reintegrated, he'll be able to enter the severed floor, hopefully go get Gemma without losing everything that he knows on the outside.
Right. I hope so.
But the fact that the last episode is called Cold Harbor makes me think that they're not going to rescue Gemma next episode.
Yeah, I don't think so. But we do know now that I think that your thoughts on next episode make sense, because we know that Mark and Helly know where the directions to the elevator, the testing floor elevator are. Mm-hmm. So like either of them, I don't know which one, are probably going to use that in the next episode to try and get down there.
Yeah, and I wonder if they're going to lean on Mark's reintegration. Like maybe this next episode is going to be kind of reconnaissance to figure out what needs to happen, and then they have to make Mark seem like everything's fine and come in as his innie as normal to carry out the final mission.
Right. Ooh.
Ooh.
I'm so excited. This is going to be a good one, guys. Don't lose hope.
Yeah, if this wasn't your favorite episode, that's okay. This show is just incredible. The creators, the actors, I'm just like blown away. Mm-hmm. And I love this story. I'm just in love with this story, and I can't wait to see where they take it.
Me too. Any final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts are I can't wait for Rickon's hero moment. We are going to see it happen.
Yeah, totally.
I guess my final thoughts are we have so many other characters that we haven't seen in these past 2 episodes. So I'm really curious how they're going to tie up the loose ends with Dylan and his wife, that whole situation, with evil Bert and that whole situation.
Right?
With Rickon and his whatever he's doing. There's so many loose ends to tie up. I know this isn't the last season, but I think somehow they have to tie somewhat of a bow on some of these things. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm curious how they're going to do it in 2 episodes, but I think there's going to be a lot more hopping around these 2 episodes, which we haven't seen the last 2 episodes.
I'm actually really ready for it after this episode. Like, I feel like it was a good kind of break from the chaos in a way.
Yeah, I think it was a palate cleanser, and now we're ready to jump back in.
I regret to inform the next episode is 44 minutes. But
it better just be hit after hit after hit.
It will be. I think it will be. All right.
Well, thanks for sticking with us, folks, and listening to our babbling about Ether and Dieter's Peter and all the great stuff we learned this episode.
Yeah. And if you're not listening to our recaps on The White Lotus Season 3, those are really fun. Those are more bite-sized, quick, our thoughts on the drama that's unfolding and the inevitable death at the end of the season that we know is coming. So give those a listen. And let us know. I mean, we're wrapping up on Severance soon, and we're just going to be doing White Lotus, I think, for a hot minute. But if there's something coming up that you would like for us to watch, or a movie that is coming out that you want us to talk about, let us know. I would love to watch what y'all want us to watch.
Tell us something better than Love is Blind, because that shit got me angry.
I know. The straights are ruining TV.
Straights, they're trying to kill me. All right,
true.
y'all. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.